A third aircraft carrier is on the way to the Middle East. I'm saying this again. A third United States aircraft carrier is on its way to the Middle East, together with B-1 bombers that are already prepared, and balls of fire are in the skies over Tehran. It appears that Tehran is going up in flames, and the Air Force bombed the international airport in Iran, and the IDF destroyed 16 aircrafts all at once at the airport in Tehran. The domino effect has begun. Israel is preparing for a move that will bring down Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Qatar one after the other. The train has left the station, and Trump said Iran is no longer a bully. It is the loser of the Middle East, and it will be hit hard today. A large number of strategic bombers are on the way to Iran, and Trump's threat is, today, Iran will take a hard hit. Trump added, "We destroyed 42 ships in 3 days. The Iranians are bad people. Look at what happened on October 7th, according to the United States President Donald Trump. After the Israeli-American wave of strikes in Iran, thousands are dead in Iran's internal security forces, and hundreds are still under the rubble. Iran is losing its firepower from 420 launchers to only 100. Iran has lost 70% of its launch capabilities. In Israel, they are preparing for another week of strikes and for an uprising of the Iranian citizens against the regime." Conflicting messages and confusing reports, it seems that in Iran, they are struggling to choose the next number one target of the United States and of Israel, who will be the next leader of the Ayatollah regime. And while all eyes are on Iran, the United States is sending significant force to the Red Sea. And the United Arab Emirates is under a powerful attack. The airspace has been completely closed. A third aircraft carrier is on its way to the region. What is the significance of this move? And Trump's don't to the Houthis? We'll talk about all of the above. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is Mati Shoshani, and this is your Boots on the Ground report, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and everything that is also happening in the Middle East. This is the 8th day of the Lion's Roar War, or as the Americans call it, Epic Fury. The IDF destroyed 16 aircrafts all at once at the airport in Iran, together with 16 aircrafts which, according to the IDF, were used by the Quds forces to arm and finance Hezbollah, the terrorist organization, a proxy of the Ayatollah regime in Lebanon, and other Iranian proxies in the entire Middle East. Iranian fighter jets that threatened the Air Force aircrafts were also struck. Ahead of a dramatic strike, what do you think? Let me know in the comments, because 4 B-1 bombers are already in Britain carrying the symphony of destruction. The President of the United States, who said that the Americans are preparing for a big blow against Iran, raised the level of threats exactly 1 week after the outbreak of the war, saying that today Iran will take a very hard blow. The destruction of groups and individuals who until now were not considered targets is being considered. Israeli officials say that the Air Force will focus on preserving the achievement and carrying out repeated strikes. The preparation before the strike in Iran included a forecast for intensive fire towards Israel. And what the Iranians were supposed to fire in 1 day, they fired in a full week. The President of the United States is satisfied with the progress of this war. He announced that we destroyed 42 ships of the Iranian Navy in 3 days and their air forces. And earlier, Trump promised that Iran would be hit very hard today and called it the loser of the Middle East. After saying that Khamenei's son is not acceptable to him, the President of the United States declared, "After the next leader is chosen, we will work non-stop to rebuild Iran and make it great, good, and strong again. Iran will have a bright future. Make Iran great again." Trump's vision includes a new Iranian regime that will cooperate with the United States in oil production, as well as securing the uranium stockpiles. In the meantime, he published a statement that humiliates the Iranians to the dust. Iran apologized and agreed to surrender, no longer the bully of the Middle East. And Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, declared an end to aggression towards the neighboring Gulf states and apologized for the launching of thousands of missiles and drones at the beginning of the war. However, despite his promises of cooperation and his rejection of America's surrender demands, minutes after the speech, directed hits and interceptions were recorded in Bahrain, in Qatar, and in the United Arab Emirates. So what's happening? Silent death in the heart of the sea. The United States is demanding that Sri Lanka not return to Iran the survivors of the ship that was sunk just earlier this week. 32 people were rescued after an Iranian warship was sunk while making its way back from a naval exercise led by India in the Bay of Bengal. The United States is asking the government of Sri Lanka, which took in the survivors to their own nation, not to return them to Iran. And the Israeli Air Force is making history. The armies of the world are in shock at the power of the Israeli Air Force. 3 sorties every single day, and an insane rate of armament that broke global standards. While the pilots raced to Iran on energy pills, the partnership with the United States and the resurfacedness of the women in the aircrafts and the shelters created one arm that choked Tehran's launch capabilities. And we will bring you all the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your boots on the ground, reporting to you about everything that's happening in Israel and in the Middle East. And this is the 8th day of the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And the second, before we begin, I want to call on you to continue to spread the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time. And if you want to see real life here in Israel, behind the scenes, make sure to look for Mati Shoshani and Yair Pinto on social media. So let's begin. Mati, what do you say about the developments so far? There are rumors that Trump tonight will use his B-1 and B-2 bombers. And what does that mean for Iran?
Well, I think we're entering an interesting phase. Phase number 1, the first week, let's say, of this war, was something interesting. It was one, creating complete air dominance, which Israel did together with the U.S. It's eliminating the majority of the launchers, not all, but the majority of the launchers, which again has already happened. It's removing the head of the snake, sort of the top layer of IRGC and Ayatollah regime leadership. That's already been done. And now starts the heavy bombing, the heavy cleanup mission, let's call it, removing what needs to be removed as far as infrastructure facilities, as far as military facilities, as far as, let's call it, the big fighting pieces of the IRGC, of the different fighting forces, the proper Iranian army, the weapons depots, the tanks, the armored vehicles, everything that will allow them to put up a substantial fight. And at the same time, it's rebuilding and allowing some kind of force to stand up to the IRGC. You mentioned the name of the planes. To most people at home, maybe they've seen a picture of this, but we're transitioning from needing to fly stealth planes into Iran. So F-35s, F-22s, B-2 bombers, stealth planes, and a lot of electronic warfare, like the Growler and several other aircraft that have to sort of penetrate and eliminate with or electronic warfare or with stealth capabilities. But now when you bring in something like the B-1 Lancer, this is an enormous plane. We're talking like 45 meters of wingspan, huge plane, several hundred metric tons, 35 tons of payload capability, just something that is substantially bigger, substantially more of a heavy bomber than anything else, even with a bigger bomb capability than a B-52. That's how big it is. And that only comes in when you have air superiority and you have no fear of any S-400, S-300 Russian air defense system shooting down the planes. So one that shows you the situation where today we clearly know that Iran is no longer a threat to U.S. or Israeli aircraft. I mean, maybe statistically, yes, but not in a substantial way. Two, we're moving into the substantial grind and pound phase of this, which is really breaking up everything that's left of the Ayatollah regime. And you can hear, and I think we were talking about this just before we went on air, you can hear the frustration in the Trump White House of just wanting this to come to a conclusion, of being furious with the Ayatollah regime, of being emboldened, in the stance of like, well, we're going to fight to the death. What death? It's the death of your people, not the death of the regime.
Yeah.
A very, very illogical behavior. You see this almost like this petulant, childlike behavior of, on the one hand, and again, this is very synonymous with Iranian, let's call it Ayatollah regime behavior. On the one hand, they say, we want peace and nothing but peace, and we repent for bombing our neighbors. And literally an hour later, they're bombing their neighbors again. Just, similar tricks and the synonymous tricks that we've always seen from these people. And the hope is, the expectation is that we can put enough pressure on them, this heavy bombing, the substantial pressure on them on every front. And I'd say one thing, and I'm guessing I'm probably pulling something from the what you're going to talk about in a few minutes later on in the broadcast, is that Israel has also taken up that attack a notch, which is by attacking the oil reservoirs of Iran. What we're doing is responding with tit for tat. Hold on, we have an upcoming siren attack.
The sirens alarm.
Yeah, siren sometime or maybe not.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we
but to get to the point,
have more time.
Yeah, we have time. So to get to the point, Israel has also been responding to what the Iranians have been doing, and we bombed earlier today, with the government's permission, by the way, several of their oil, let's call it deposits. The reason for that is there's a money and a time game here, where Iran is looking at their neighbors and saying, well, if I'm suffering, I'm going to make sure you suffer. I'm going to prevent your ships from traveling through the Hormuz Straits. I'm going to bomb your oil refineries. I'm going to make life for your civilians very unpleasant by bombing your cities time and time again. And Israel looked at that and said, well, you know what? Since this is a time and money game, we're going to shorten your time. We're going to cut your oil supply. And earlier today, the government in Israel approves for the Israeli Air Force to go and bomb some of the oil refineries, or oil, let's call it stashes, deposits for the Iranian regime, to sort of shorten their lifespan of being able to operate without refineries, without fuel, without, and of course, without cash, as they've seen. So I think we're at this place where they're trying to really push this and prolong this as long as they want. And we, of course, and the Americans, are trying to shorten the life cycle of this project, let's call it, and make this end in a more decisive and faster way. That's where we are today. I don't want to guess, but Yael, if you had to guess, how much longer do you think this is going to last? I'll just keep on going. I'm going to give my guess first. My guess is we have several more weeks. We've heard this from the IDF. We've heard this from Trump. We've heard this from the Israeli government. We're expecting multiple more weeks of this trickle of ballistic missiles, this trickle of, another strike here, another strike there. And all that time, Israel, together with the US, just hammering the Iranians, removing their infrastructure on the military level, hunting down the leaders of the IRGC, hunting down the leaders of the Ayatollah regime, working behind the scenes. This is probably more CIA and Mossad than military, working behind the scenes to enable any kind of resistance and opposition to the Iranian regime, be it Kurds, be it others, be it just Ayatollah regime factions, arming them, sending in vehicles, etc., etc. By the way, I want to say something to you guys who are watching this at home. Be very, very, very careful with the content that you believe when you see it online. Just the other day, I had several clips show up on social media that were showing convoys of armored vehicles that the report was traveling from Kurdish Iraq to Iran. And it was not real footage. It was footage from past conflicts that had nothing to do with this conflict. But there's a lot of fake media and a lot of AI that is being used in this conflict. Anyway, to sum this up, we're looking at several weeks here. And in these weeks, the substantial bombing is going to take place against IRGC and Ayatollah regime targets in Iran. There's going to be a very, very substantial effort to eliminate all terrorism and let's call it disrupting elements within the Iranian Navy. That is their surface vessels. That is whatever submarines they have left, if any. That is any aircraft that they have left. That's the weapon depots, the oil depots, everything that would allow them a prolonged conflict. We're going after it. Israel, together with the United States. What you're seeing on the screen is one of the many hundreds of ballistic missile launchers that have been removed. Again, in the ballistic missile world, the bottleneck is the launchers, not the missiles. You could have 100 ballistic missiles, but if you only have a single launcher, you're only launching one at a time, and you have to reload it every single time. So that's really that. That's where we've been on this topic, this hunt mission to remove the ballistic missile launchers. And I think this is important for people to note. We're going back to a sense of normalcy. Our kids are slowly going back to schools. Businesses are reopening. Our team, tomorrow's Sunday, it's the first day of the work week in Israel. Our team's going back to work in the office, simply because things have calmed down when it comes to the conflict with the Iranians. Their ability to effectively launch and penetrate our air defenses is slowly diminishing, and it's nowhere near what it was on the first days of this war, and it's nothing like what it was in Operation Midnight Hammer back in the June of 2025. So we've seen a substantial attrition of their munition ability, a very substantial attrition of their ability to execute and carry out attacks, and all that time, our ability to defend ourselves from the Iranian attacks has increased. And they've done one really big mistake, one huge miscalculation. And that miscalculation is what they're doing to their neighbors. They thought that they would be able to sort of poke and prod at their neighbors, at the UAE, at the Kuwaitis, the Qataris, the Saudis, even at people, members of NATO. And they would do that, and the result would be those countries running to the Americans and saying, President Trump, please stop your attacks. Please stop, with these attacks, because the Iranians are hurting us. The exact opposite happened to a certain degree. Those countries publicly went out against the Iranians and said, we're going to come and attack you again. Interestingly, and honestly not very surprisingly, they didn't actually join in the attack. They're still sort of playing this out very, very carefully, because Iran is their next door neighbor. They don't want to anger them. They don't know how this is going to play out. But they did create an enemy that they were not expecting in these countries.
Mati, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Are you back with us, Yael?
Okay. Yeah, I'm back with you. It wasn't because of the sirens alarm. It was because I didn't plug the electricity cord. So now I'm with you.
No worries. Anyway, so I was just summing up and saying that one of Iran's biggest miscalculations was attacking their neighbors. They got the entire region to rise up against them and to start threatening and joining in the attack. And I think that's something that they expected to go differently than it actually did, and it might backfire dramatically in the days and weeks to come. Back to you, Yael.
Yeah, Mati, I just wonder, did you explain to our viewers regarding the fact that the United States is bringing a third aircraft carrier into this region? And what's the point of that? Because that's like big. So guys, if you didn't know this, the United States is bringing a third aircraft carrier with its fighter group. That means like multiple fighter Navy vessels and airplanes and refueling systems and logistical support. And this time they're bringing it to the Red Sea. And according to our reports, the whole point, look at this huge ship, by the way. It's like a moving city. So according to our reports, this is in order to deter the Houthis from joining in order to support their masters, the Ayatollah regime. So,
Mati, can I say something? Last week, when me and you were in the U.S., I was on a World War II aircraft carrier, the USS Midway in San Diego. And that aircraft carrier served from like 45 through, I think, the late 80s or something like that. And I traveled on it, and you can see in it, one, the military power of the U.S., one, their ability to just to deploy vessels that have 4,500, 5,000 sailors on them, all working as a team, to have multiple generations of aircraft on a single vessel. I mean, the industrial power behind it is so impressive. Anyone who looks at that and says Iran has anything that can stop them, or any country in the world for that, has any kind of industrial might that would be able to stand up to that, they don't know what they're talking about. The U.S. has now aircraft carriers in the region that are double the size of what I was standing on last week. These enormous vessels, just enormous vessels that have dozens of aircraft on them with all the logistical supply to fight an entire war out at sea. And when you see that, and the fact that they're bringing in a third carrier group, it just shows you how serious the Trump White House is in really decisively ending this conflict, and how little a chance the Ayatollah regime has to stand up against it. What they're going to be looking at in the very near future is just hiding away from both their people and from the Americans, because they have no way to fight against it. There's simply no way for them to stop it. So I don't know if you can hear the thudding over our head, but there's a huge amount of crackling. That's the intercepts in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
The arrow, David Sling, etc. But the sirens are not here. The sirens are more to the west of us, without stating exactly where we are, Iran. Anyway,
Yeah,
Yael,
exactly.
what do you have for us?
So, yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and we had a relatively quiet Saturday, Shabbat, here in Israel, but it looks like from the statements of Donald Trump, from the movement of military pieces into this region, from the fact that the Ayatollah regime are not giving up and they're, voicing these statements of, we are still here, talk with us, but at the same time firing rockets, looks like this is going to be a prolonged war. And according to the estimates in Israel, it's going to be at least 2 weeks, plus minus, but it looks like from the United States, this is going to be a lot longer than that. What are your estimates?
Yeah, I was talking about that a few minutes ago. We're looking at several more weeks. The main thrust of this war has been achieved, removing the leadership, removing much of their fighting ability, most of the launchers, most of their, let's call it ships, vessels, submarines, etc. All of their planes, or almost all of their aerial firepower. But it's not going to be the last drone or the last launcher or the last ICBM for a while now. And that's really the war that we're engaging in, is now this war where we're bringing in the heavy bombers, the heavy munitions, to really grind away at whatever reserves the Iranians have and put a pressure on it. And that cleanup job, that mop-up job, as it's called, is going to be several weeks in the making, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, but several more weeks is the estimation that you're hearing, both from the White House, also in Israel, and also from the IDF. That's sort of where it feels like. But I said this just before you joined back, Yael. Life is going back to normal in Israel. We're getting ready to sort of get back to sort of business as usual, with a slight deviation from normal, where there's a ballistic missile launch every once in a while. But aside from that, and I know it sounds bizarre to say this, life is going to go back to normal in Israel in the next couple of days.
Well, listen, my youngest son is 2 years and a half. Basically, this is his normal life since October 7th, to the war with Iran #1, war with Iran #2, and now war with Iran #3. So I guess for some Israelis, this is normal. And also for us, it's been kind of back and forth into this situation. But I would say last question to you, Mati, is how can people around the world pray for you, your family, and for the IDF at this time?
I'm happy you asked this. I was going to chime into what you were saying and say that I was thinking about this the other day. I haven't had a spring as a civilian in 3 years. And I love biking, I love traveling with my family, etc. We haven't gone hiking, we haven't gone biking in Israeli, let's call it late winter or spring, since 2022. And I know it sounds like 2023, the spring of 2023. 24, 25, 26, in uniform and away from the family. My youngest is 10 years old. He hasn't had a single year of school. This is related to COVID and the war. That was a full normal year. He's in the 5th grade. And really, when you think about the disruption of life, it needs to be, and we always say this, prayer for the families, both for the healing of relationships and hearts. Again, it's not normal for a father to be away for an extended period of time. It's not normal for families to be in the bomb shelters multiple times a day, waking up in the middle of the night. The trauma is there, it's present. The effect on their school system, the effect on their personal life, on relationships, it's there. So the prayer needs to be for the restoration of families and the hearts and the souls of the people in this country. Everything else will fall in line after that. And I think one more big topic of prayer is for the people of Iran to quickly, swiftly, effectively replace their government. That should be our prayer, our #1 prayer for everyone, is to really replace that regime as soon as possibly effective. And as soon as we possibly can, because they deserve better than that. So those will be the 2 prayers.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. And we'll be praying for you, Mati, and have a great start of the week.
Amen.
So back to the updates of tonight. We have reports of huge fires that rose above the Merhabad area, which is in the heart of Tehran, as the Israeli Air Force struck the airport and destroyed 16 Quds Forces aircrafts that they were all there at the same time. And along with those aircrafts, the Iranian fighter jets that threatened the Israeli aircrafts were also struck. And in those very same hours, the strikes on the military infrastructure deep inside Iran also continued. So why this airport now? And why does the 8th day of the Lion's Roar War, or epic furor, look like a moment in which Israel and the United States are no longer only breaking the targets, but are beginning to try to break the entire system? This is the 8th day of the war, and the main story this evening is not just another wave of strikes, but a clear change in pace, in depth, and in selection of targets. At first, we saw the hunting of the launchers, damage to the headquarters, and the breaking of the ability to launch barrages at Israel and at the Gulf states. Now, we are seeing something broader: strikes on airports used by the Quds forces to transfer money and weapons, strikes on heavy military industry components, the continued erosion of the Iranian fleet, the deployment of more American naval power in the region, and at the same time, increasingly harsh political messages from Washington about unconditional surrender, about new leadership in Iran, and about the possibility that all options remain on the table. Let us begin with tonight in Tehran. At Merhabad Airport, 16 Quds Force aircrafts were destroyed. These were not presented as just aircraft sitting on the ground. According to the IDF, these were platforms used to transfer weapons and cash to Hezbollah and other Iranian proxies in the Middle East. In other words, Israel did not strike just another target inside Iran. It struck an axis that connects Tehran to its regional proxies. It struck a logistical route, a financing route, and armament route. And therefore, the message here is broader than the Iranian arena itself. Whoever strikes such an airfield in the heart of the capital is also striking the regime's ability to project power through proxies. This strike also includes another layer. Alongside the Quds Force aircrafts, Iranian fighter jets that threatened the Air Force aircrafts of Israel and the United States were also struck. In other words, Israel did not settle for a logistical strike, but continued to generate pressure on what remains of Iran's air capability to respond, interfere, or also intercept. The result is not just the sight of balls on fire on the runways. The result is continued tightening of the air superiority over Iran. But Merhabad is only part of the picture. The heavier target, the more strategic one, was the Parkhin complex. This is one of the most sensitive sites in Iran, about 30 kilometers southeast of Tehran. Heavy military industries are stored there. Warheads, engines, and systems for missiles and munitions arrays are produced and stored in that location. Facilities for the restorations and maintenance of systems in the military industry also operate there. In simple words, in Merhabad is the regime's external artery. Parkhin is one of its industrial hearts. And Parkhin also has another layer. For years, it has been identified not only with missiles, but also with sensitive activity related to the nuclear program. In the past, essential facilities for mixing solid fuel for long-range missiles were already hit in that location, as well as buildings attributed to research and development of the nuclear components. Now, as it is once again in the crosshairs, the meaning is clear. Israel and the United States have moved from the stage of striking operational deployment to the stage of striking the base of production, maintenance, and renewal. Not only those who fire, also those who build, those who assemble, those who repair, those who bring the machine back into operation. And that is exactly what is now being defined in the military system as the next stage. The goal is to crush Iran's chain of capabilities from the production stage to the finished product, in missiles, in launchers, in explosives, in engines, in storage, in maintenance. In some cases, these are also dual-use factories, seemingly civilian, but ones that hold critical components for the missile and the drone project. That is why we are now seeing a shift to deeper facilities, more sensitive ones, and ones whose destruction not only reduces tomorrow's morning and the barrages that it may bring, but tries to delay Iran by months and also by years in their development of military capabilities. And at the same time, the Israeli Air Force continues to operate at an almost unprecedented pace. One of the pictures emerging from the 8th day is not only what was struck, but how it is happening. 3 sorties every single day, an armament of rate that broke the standards. Ground crews returning aircrafts to battle at a speed of foreign officers struggle to understand, because the IDF and the Israeli Air Force are at a top level of performance in this war. And the intelligence work that feeds precise targets on a razor's edge is what's happening behind the scenes. And with cooperation with the United States, also there is an enormous envelope of refueling, air management, and the ability to sustain skies that are crowded with aircrafts, strikes, and maneuvers almost without stopping. According to the descriptions that emerged in the last 24 hours, the main race was in the first 48 hours, when a direct competition was created between Iran's launch capabilities and the Air Force's abilities to destroy launchers and missiles quickly enough. The Iranians prepared. They deployed bulldozers and tractors at underground sites to open bomb tunnels as quickly as possible. They tried to return launchers to operational status. But the frequency of the Israeli sorties did not leave them time to breathe. Therefore, the sharp decline in the pace of launches is not accidental. It is the result of a race that was broken. The updated figure that sums it all up is sharp. On the eve of the campaign, Iran had about 420 launchers. It now has only about 100 active launchers that are left. And around 150 were completely destroyed, and another approximately 150 that were damaged, that were buried underground and taken out of use, at least temporarily. Bottom line, Iran has lost about 70% of its launch capabilities, and that changes the entire operational picture. Israel is handling the launchers that threaten Israel from the western side of Iran. The Americans are operating mainly in the south of the country against the firing directions towards the Gulf states and American bases. Together, the two armies are closing Iran's ability to manage broad fire on several arenas simultaneously. At the same time, Washington is adding its own heavy layer. Trump said tonight that the Americans are preparing for a big blow against Iran, and he raised the level of threats exactly 1 week after the outbreak of this war. He said that Iran is no longer the bully of the Middle East, but the loser of the Middle East, and added that today it will take a very hard hit. In additional statements, he said that the United States destroyed 42 ships in 3 days, and that the Iranian Navy and the Iranian Air Force have been defeated. The wording changes, the numbers rise, but the line is consistent. Trump wants this campaign to be perceived not as just another round, but as Iran's strategic humiliation. And this also connects to what is happening in Britain. According to the reports, 4 B-1 bombers are already in Britain, ahead of what was defined as the possibility of a dramatic strike. The combination of B-1s, B-2s, aircraft carriers, and a huge American refueling arm teaches something important. The Americans are not building here only for a few nights of response. They are building a system that is capable of continuing, renewing, and expanding. Strategic bombers for long ranges, aircraft carriers that can sustain a pace of war, missile destroyers, aerial refueling, and everything is meant so that the pressure on Iran will not decrease even if the war continues for weeks. And before we continue forward, there is a short point here that is important to stop on. When people think about supporting the IDF soldiers, they think about maybe food, barbecue, a quick morale boost a vacation away from the fighting. But Israel is not at war just with Iran. This is not a moment for just small gestures. This is a moment for action that saves lives. So through donations at bless-israel.org, Meir Panim is providing real battlefield support, tens of thousands of helmets, vests, and every gear that the soldier needs in order to protect his life. Personal combat gear that stays with each soldier, ready when the call comes. And right now, that call can come at any hour. More than 150 life-saving drones have already been delivered, tools that are actively rescuing wounded soldiers under fire. When soldiers are injured, adaptive clothing restores their dignity so that they can operate. When families lose a son, full Shiva meals arrive at their door. Every week, 500 reservists and their families are supported. 1,500 soldiers are fed every single day. Over 110,000 soldiers are strengthened through morale programs. In a direct war with Iran, this support is not just symbolic, it is essential. Stand with Israel's soldiers now. Go to bless-israel.org. Again, that's bless-israel.org. And now, let's get back to the picture on the ground, because this picture is expanding far beyond Iran itself. While all eyes are on Tehran, the United States is also sending significant forces to the Red Sea. And this is not a sidestep. It is a direct message to the Houthis in Yemen. In the United States, they understand that the war against Iran is taking place not only above the skies of Tehran, but also in the shipping corridors, in the Strait of Hormuz, and in the Red Sea. Therefore, the aircraft carrier George H.W. Bush has begun sailing with its task group, which includes 3 missiles destroyers, and it is expected to arrive in the area within 10 to 12 days. It is joining the Lincoln and the Gerald Ford. In other words, 3 American aircraft carriers will be connected to this campaign within a short time. The significance is twofold. First, the United States is preparing for a long campaign. 3 task groups around 3 aircraft carriers allow it to keep crushing without wearing one force down to the edge. Second, there is an immediate message here to the Houthis. Do not enter, do not expand, do not try and turn the Red Sea into another front. This comes at a time when a senior Houthi official is already threatening that expanding the conflict to Yemen is only a matter of time. Therefore, the Pentagon is sending not only more iron, but also a signal. If you enter, you will encounter American power that is built especially to block this. And above the sea, there is also another arena, a more unusual one, Sri Lanka. The United States is applying heavy pressure on Colombo not to return to Iran the survivors of the warship Dana, which was sunk by the torpedo from an American submarine in the Indian Ocean about 30 nautical miles from the port of Gale. 32 survivors came ashore, and at the same time, 208 crew members of another Iranian auxiliary ship are also being held in Sri Lanka. Washington does not want these people to become Iranian propaganda materials, and it is also examining options to encourage defection. This is no longer just a naval strike. This is handling the day after the strike, control of the message, control of the survivor's fate, a geographic expansion of the war deep into the Indian Ocean. In the Gulf itself, the pressure continues. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, tried to protect and to project calm. He emphasized the relations of friendship with the neighboring states, said that Iran does not deny its right to defend itself, and claimed that it did not attack the neighboring states, but American bases and facilities in the region. But in practice, the reports from the Gulf points to a different reality. Direct hits and interceptions were recorded in Bahrain, in Qatar, and in the United Arab Emirates. In the Emiratis, explosions were heard in areas of American bases. The local interior ministry called on citizens to remain in a safe place. At the same time, it was reported that the airspace was completely closed, at least at a certain stage of the escalation. There is also a report of an Iranian attempt to strike the control tower of the airport in Dubai, which missed by only a few meters. And on the ground, thousands of civilians, including Israelis who were stranded in the Emirates, described a sense of uncertainty, explosions without sirens, and complete confusion surrounding the rescue flights. The broader significance is that the campaign is not remaining clean within Iran's borders. It is directly touching the global space of aviation, oil, tourism, and the sense of security of the Gulf states. This is where the strategic dimension of energy and the prices and trade also comes in. The goal of the United States is not only to deter the Houthis, it is also to renew the movement of all tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, which has fallen by 95% compared to the period before the war. After the destruction of the large part of the Iranian fleet, threats from shore-to-sea missiles and speedboats still remain. Therefore, the Americans are signaling that they will escort tankers, absorb insurance costs, and try to keep the oil route open. This is no longer only an Air Force story. This is a story about the world's economy. And back to Tehran, behind the smoke, behind the fire, and the bombings, there is now also deep governmental confusion that's taking place there. Since the termination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the Assembly of Experts for the Leadership has been trying to choose a replacement, but the messages are contradictory. One time, they say the meeting will take place within 24 hours. Then comes a clarification that no general meeting took place at all and that no choice was made. One time, it was reported that Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was chosen under pressure from the Revolutionary Guards. Then, it is reported that the announcement is being delayed for fear that he too will be immediately terminated. Now, it was even reported that Mujtaba himself was wounded in an Israeli strike but survived. The result is not only media confusion. The result is a regime that is afraid even to declare aloud who will replace the leader, because the declaration itself may mark the next person for assassination. And this is exactly the place where Trump raises the diplomatic bar. He is no longer speaking only about strikes. He says explicitly that there will be no agreement with Iran except unconditional surrender. He says that after a leader is chosen who is acceptable to the United States, Washington will act to rebuild Iran, make it greater, better, and stronger than ever before, and ensure that whoever rises to power will no longer threaten the United States, Israel, or anyone else. He even signals that it will be, as part of his slogan, "Make Iran Great Again." This vision includes, according to the reports, two clear layers. The first is a new Iranian regime that will cooperate with the United States in oil production, and the second is securing the Iranian stockpiles in order to prevent a situation of regime collapse that would create a nuclear bazaar. That is, a black market in which radioactive materials and sensitive technology are looted, sold, and distributed. This also explains why assessments are now being heard in the White House regarding limited American ground forces for strategic purposes. Not a broad invasion, not an occupation, but yes, commando forces, yes, security, yes, seizure of sites or monitoring of sensitive materials. According to the reports, Trump discussed this possibility with advisors and with senior Republicans. The idea is very small, precise, a force for specific targets, even when needed. The White House does emphasize that no decision has been made, but it also makes clear that all options remain open. On the other side, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has already threatened that this would be a major mistake, a major disaster for the United States of America, and that Iran is ready for any kind of scenario. Therefore, at this stage, the ground threat is important mainly as a pressure component. It forces Tehran to think not only about more waves of strikes, but also about the possibility that someone may come to take control of sites or materials that it must protect. And within all of this, Trump also continues on the line of political humiliation. He said that Iran was hit so badly that it apologized and agreed to surrender to its neighbors in the Middle East and promised that it will not fire at them any longer. Even if in practice, we later saw interceptions and also hits in the Gulf states. This statement is important because it presents Washington's goals not only as a military defeat, but also as a reversal of the regional hierarchy. So no longer an Iran that imposes fear on the Gulf, but an Iran that apologizes to it. Meanwhile, in Israel, we are already preparing for another week of strikes, not only to preserve the achievements, but repeated strikes in order to keep it going and to up the tempo. The logic is simple. If they stop too early, the launchers that were buried will return to action. If we leave funding and routes open, the proxies receive oxygen, money, finances, and support. If they stop pressing the industry, restoration will begin. Therefore, the focus now is preserving the achievements and deepening it. More revisiting of the targets, more crushing, more damage to every junction that Iran can still use to raise its head. The 8th day of the war shows that the campaign has moved from a stage of response and painful blows to the stage of systematic dismantling of the Iranian capabilities in the air, at sea, and also in the industry and at the top of the government. If tonight in Tehran already looks like the beginning of a domino effect that will turn the Revolutionary Guards in Iran into an old memory in history, we will see. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about this. In the meantime, this is Boots on the Ground on TBN Israel on YouTube. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, leave us a comment, tell us what you think will happen tonight in the skies of Iran. Only God will know. But in the meantime, I call on all of you to help us share the truth. Follow us and let us know what you think. If you want to know and see behind the scenes how it is to live in Israel under war, look for Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani on social media platforms, and you'll see what's happening here on the ground. And the most important thing that you can do, of course, even more important than subscribing to TBN Israel, is to pray. This is a spiritual war. We need your help in prayer. Not just saying it. I really believe that God is listening and acting. When you pray, pray for the Iranian people. Pray for wisdom to our leaders, to our commanders on the field, for their families back at home. Pray for all the people that are under the effects of rockets. Pray for a better, peaceful Middle East, not just for the next week or 2 weeks, for the next generation, for our kids to have the ability to go to sleep without waking up, entering bomb shelters. This is something that I pray for my kids. So unite in prayer with me. Pray for the people of Iran. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We'll see you again tomorrow.